So you're considering a Range Rover L322. I'm guessing you are, because why else would you be watching this video? Now, if you're anything like me, you're probably on your 40th or 50th video on the exact same subject around the L322, and you're just waiting for that final snippet of new information that allows you to get across the line and pull the trigger and make up all those excuses in your head as to why this is a good purchase. So I'm hoping by the end of this video, you'll either be running straight towards the classifieds, or your already favorited searches for the L322 and you'll be getting one, or you'll be running for the door and you'll never consider one again. So yeah, let's see if I can help. I just want to start off this video by saying, if you're a person who despises high running costs, don't like spending money on maintaining your car, and got better things to spend your money on, which I totally get, then this is not the car for you. I'm not trying to be condescending whatsoever. These cars are incredibly good at making quick friends with your wallet and bank balance, so if that's something that puts you off, then this isn't the car for you. If you want a bit more guidance on the specific kind of running costs and ownership costs of these cars, check out my video here. The numbers are quite staggering, but to some people that might be par for the course and you accept it and it is what it is, and others it might make you sick to your stomach. So I'll let you make your mind up on that one. But for the time being, stay here and let's chat more about the L322. So the Range Rover I'm in today is obviously an L322, but it's the 4.4 litre TDV8 Westminster edition, which for anyone who doesn't know Range Rovers particularly well, it's the last edition they made of this car before it went out of production in, I think, late 2012, early 2013. This one itself is a 62 plate, so it's a fairly fresh one as far as an L322 goes, but still a 13-year-old car. One of the main selling points of this particular L322 isn't the fact that it's a Westminster, it is down to the engine. It's the 4.4 litre Ford-derived power unit. I think it's originally from the F-150 in the US, and although some Range Rover enthusiasts in the comments may disagree, it's kind of regarded as one of the most reliable engines that you could get in an L322. Like I said, I'm sure some people will disagree, but there's a reason it was kind of the last engine they used in the iteration. You know, as with most cars, as you go through the generations and you have the faceless, etc., you know, they iron out a lot of the kinks, and hence why we have this engine. It's not without its pitfalls though. It's probably a lot more reliable than the 3.6 TDV8 that was its predecessor. Not that that's a horrifically bad engine, but it is known to have quite bad turbo issues, and you know, when the turbos do go, it's a really expensive fix. Despite this being obviously a fairly reliable engine, you know, it's not without its problems. If you are looking at one, you know, just again make sure that it's been serviced, maintained, etc., that all the intervals have been hit, because you know they do have problems. Quite common ones are sort of oil leaks, especially due to the oil cooler, kind of O-rings and seals splitting. Effectively, stuff you'd get on most cars, but you know, these aren't without problems. Turbos can go, anything that can go on any car can go wrong with these, but again, against the rest of the engines in the lineup, within reason, they're probably the most reliable. To partner this beast of an engine, Range Rover also upgraded the gearbox, so this is the 8-speed ZF gearbox, and to be honest, I have no complaints whatsoever. It's a really, really good unit, especially on like long journeys. That 8th gear, like you wouldn't think it, but it really does help. It sits at incredibly low revs at high speed, and obviously that helps with the general efficiency of the car, which, you know, I'll talk about a bit later. Speaking of motorways, I honestly can't recommend how good this car is for long journeys. I did a trip to Edinburgh back in January with a fully loaded car, family in there, baby in train, etc. And it was just an absolute beast, honestly. It was comfy, quiet. I think the best way to describe it is it just felt incredibly safe. It was like driving with sort of like an old friend that you just knew would get you there. And I know obviously reliability can be, you know, a bit of a pinch point and a pain point for people when it comes to Range Rovers, but when they kind of work like that for those journeys, there's not much else I'd want to be in. You know, whether that's a modern car, new car, whatever, something like this is just perfect for those. Yeah, I really just can't put into words how good it felt for that journey. You know, is it fun to drive around sort of twisty roads? No. Is it quick? Not particularly. You know, for its size, it actually is, but for those kind of just real moments where you just need that safe friend to get you home, it just does that job perfectly. I know that might sound a bit cringe and cliche, but for me, that's just where this car like is really at its pinnacle. Ooh, that is a lovely E92 M3. Ugh. I need to get one of those before the prices absolutely skyrocket. They're moving that way, and yeah, I keep looking at them on Auto Trader, and they're just doing this. So if you're looking at buying one, don't. The rubbish, crap, don't get one. Just an FYI, I'm stuck in horrific traffic. That's why every single cut is just me stationary. I'm not just parked up in the middle of a road. This traffic is just horrific. So we touched on the engine, the gearbox, etc. But if you put those two things together, what's it actually like to drive day to day? And honestly, anyone who knows me knows that I've never been the biggest fan of Range Rovers or Land Rover products. You know, I like them. I'm not one of these people that sings their praises when they do have faults and they do have issues. And, you know, the kind of people that say, oh, it's never left me stranded, but it's broken down, or the door's broken, or it's not done this, etc. I'm just not one of those people. You know, I'll tell it how it is, and I'll be honest about it. I really mean this when I say it. Apart from technology, which is obviously lacking in this car, given its age, you know, this is 13 years old, but the L322, as the design, is about 23 years old. Apart from tech, there's not much else in modern cars that I would take and put in this car. As an overall package, it's kind of a jack of all trades, a master of none. It can literally do everything, you know, whether you're traveling on your own, on the motorway, country roads, fully loaded with the family, full boot with the seats folded forward and you need to just take a load of stuff to the tip, you know, bad weather, good weather, off-road. This thing can literally do everything, and it does it in a cozy, comfy, luxurious environment. And apart from more modern Range Rovers, I don't really know what else kind of offers you that in that package. You've obviously got the Porsche Cayenne of a similar generation, which I did consider alongside this. But, you know, I've test driven both, and for me, the Range Rover just ticks more boxes. So, yeah, as a day-to-day driver, it really stacks up against modern competition. With how it's actually like to drive, I honestly have very little complaints. You know, it's incredibly quiet. It's got double glazing, and if anyone's seen the quick review I did of the Tesla Model Y, I thought that was a fairly quiet car until I actually played it back, and I think the mic was picking up some horrible noises. But that's without an engine. This has a 4.4 litre diesel engine, and I would argue that it's pretty much as quiet as the Model Y, and that's purely down to the double glazing. It's so quiet in this car, and you know, I've not had this car overly long, but the attribute of how quiet this car is shouldn't be understated. When I get in this car after work and I close that door, the near silence while commuting home is just lovely. You're in this kind of secure, quiet, luxurious bubble of your own. And I know that's been sort of a description used by a lot of people who have these cars, but it really rings true. They're not chatting absolute. It really is a key attribute of the Range Rover. As far as comfort goes, it's on air suspension, it's got big wheels. It depends what tyres you run, but it's not going to be an uncomfortable car. It's a bit bouncy, and if you pin it into a bend, there's going to be quite a lot of lean on the car. But it's not designed for that. It's designed to waft. Sorry, it's a Cayman GT4 RS there. That is lovely. I hope you saw that. Neon yellow. It's not designed for high speed. It's designed to, you know, sort of waft about in this high up command position that Range Rover have coined for themselves. For me, this car genuinely comes into its element when you're just sort of cruising on the motorway at 70 in this sort of calming, quiet environment. There's genuinely a lot to be said for getting from simply A to B on a journey without any back pain, any pains anywhere, you know, in comfort, silence, and just getting to your destination in a relaxed manner. You know, especially during rush hour, there's honestly nothing worse than kind of being hunched over in a little hatchback or a saloon, low down, annoyed because you can't see the person in front of you, or what's like, you know, holding you back and delaying you, and you get angry and you start firing on the horns and all sorts. You just don't get that with these cars. You're just above everyone else, you know. I think quite a few people who drive these cars probably take that literally in how they treat people, but you know, from a height position, you can see everything. For miles, I can see every corner of the car. I know what's behind me, I know what's in front. I can just see everything. And yeah, I just really, really like that, in case you didn't get that from this speech I'm doing. So as you can tell, I love the way this thing drives, and I enjoy having it for my day-to-day drives. But what about the looks of these things? I think this particular one, which is the facelift, the very last facelift they did, kind of divided people quite a bit. I think when it first came out, I wasn't a massive fan of the restyling they did at the front. I think Harry Metcalf and Jeremy Clarkson said in one of their videos that, you know, they Cheshireized the front end, which, you know, I kind of do get with the grille, but as this car's got older, I think generally they've just aged really, really well. A lot of people kind of want that mid-range facelift, which, you know, I do like, but as a car that I drive daily at the moment, I much prefer this, and I think the facelifted rear end and the taillights in particular really, really stand out in this car. And, you know, on that sort of dusky evening in the city, this car is very, very pretty, and it doesn't look out of place. I think that's one thing that's really good about this car, is it's hit an age and a stage now where if you're driving one, no one really knows what you're up to. You could literally be on the complete breadline and you're putting all your money into your car, or you could own a massive estate in the countryside. But with this parked up and clean, no one really knows. It looks completely at home, you know, on a field covered in mud, but it also looks fantastic, you know, outside a posh restaurant in a city. It really is that kind of car, and I love that. And I think as they get older and older, this sort of boxy style that we have with the L322 is just gonna, you know, age even better and better. So yeah, it's definitely a thumbs up for me on the styling. Also on this one with the Westminster, I really, really like the wheel design. I think of all the wheels they do for the L322, these are the nicest ones. These ones were refurbished in like a gunmetal grey by the previous owner. Kind of umming and ahhing as to whether to get that changed, but you know, they're in really good condition at the moment, so I probably won't for some time. I prefer the standard silver they come in. I think they look really, really smart and really suit this facelifted version of the car. So that's the exterior. What about the interior? Well, to be honest, the interior across the sort of 22, 23 years of the L322 hasn't changed an awful lot. You know, the tech's got slightly better. This one, for anyone who didn't know, the facelifted one got a digital dash, which it was probably one of the first iterations of the digital dashes that were around in modern cars. And, you know, it's all right. It's okay. It's not the best. It's not the worst. Would I prefer an analog dial? I don't really know, to be honest. If I'm kind of indifferent. I think it definitely modernizes the interior of the car, but equally I'm just conscious of how long it will last. And, you know, as these cars get older, they're going to be harder and harder to find and replace. Overall interior, this is not as luxurious as the L405 that succeeded it, but it's still a lovely, lovely place to be. Everything is sort of solid. Everything is really nice leathers, you know, soft. There's no scratchy plastics. There's a few bits that are a bit, you know, hit and miss. You know, these sort of buttons you get for the windows are a bit tacky. I think these must be from some sort of BMW, I don't know. You know, there's a few plastics and a few creaks and everything that come around, but that might be more from age rather than actually the design by Land Rover. Look, I'm a big fan. I'm trying to think of a way to say this without sounding weird. I'm a knob guy. From people who've seen my other videos will know that I absolutely despise this kind of all screen, no buttons, no physical contact required kind of infotainment / climate control era we're in. And, you know, the size of the kind of knobs on this L322 really are fantastic. I think I read somewhere that the reason they are so big, because they are big in this car, is whoever designed it originally wanted you to be able to get in the car and adjust everything while wearing a pair of gloves. And I just like that kind of story. I don't know if it's actually true. You know, it makes sense, but yeah, I like stuff like that. That kind of makes me like them even more. Honestly, with the interior of these, I actually have no complaints whatsoever. You know, you get everything you kind of need day to day in these cars. You get heated and cooled seats, you get heated steering wheel as standard, you know, all the kind of amenities that you would want from a car that was sort of near kind of 80, 90K back in the day. You get. I think the best way to describe this interior is like if you have that kind of comfy place you sit at home, whether it's in your office or your lounge, and you have that favourite chair that you always sit in. That's not to say this interior doesn't have issues though, it definitely does. You know, these cars are getting older now, and as with any old car, and especially ones around this generation where cars were getting more kind of, you know, electrical dependent, but the reliability wasn't necessarily there yet. You know, they can throw up quirks. I've got a few, nothing major, one of which is the blower. I know how to fix it, I've just not got around to doing it. So that's the interior. Should we talk about the elephant in the room, reliability? I think we probably should. Now, as anyone who's ever searched anything about Range Rover, whether it's on Google, YouTube, whatever, one of the things that will probably firstly crop up is reliability. People who've had them complain, people who haven't had them especially complain, and you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These cars can have problems and, you know, they can be expensive. I think my best advice with these cars, and I've said it in a few videos now across the board, is if you're going to buy one, you just have to accept that something is probably going to go wrong and that it's probably going to be costly. These cars are just notoriously expensive to fix. The parts nowadays aren't necessarily that bad. You know, you don't have to have official kind of JLR components. I mean, a lot of this is BMW, but you don't have to have official components anymore. There's a lot of aftermarket products and parts that are really, really good. And, you know, you don't have to go to a main dealer. There's a lot of decent, sort of probably local to you, independents who specialize in Range Rovers now. The problem is these cars are just complicated. They're mechanically complicated. You know, the electronics in them are complicated. Anyone who's ever lifted up the bonnet, especially the 4.4, knows that these engines were not designed with the mechanic in mind. The Japanese are great for it. The Americans in this case, not particularly. You know, these are complicated cars and hard cars to work on, and a lot has to come out to fix simple issues. Just be mindful that they're not cheap to repair. It is going to cost you money. So if you do buy one, as with a lot of people who say it online, if you do buy one, just budget for repairs. I've kind of budgeted in my head about $1,500 to $2,000 a year for sort of servicing, maintenance and repairs. It might be more, it might be less across a year, I don't know. I've done a video obviously about you know, general ownership and running costs, and I use the previous owner's invoices to gauge that kind of figure. Again, if you're interested, you know, I'll link that. And look, it's not just reliability issues either. These as a package do cost a lot to run. This car cost me just under £7,000, which in my head is still an absolute steal. But running costs over a year, including maintenance, are probably close to that. So I'm effectively buying the car every year just to run it, which sounds absurd, but you know, when you break it down, it's true. They cost a lot to run. So be prepared for that cost. You know, this particular engine, the 4.4 TDV8, is actually fairly frugal, as far as frugal can be said for a Range Rover on fuel, but you're still only going to be getting around probably 28 mpg around town if you're lucky, and about 35 to 38 on a long run. So it's by no means anything to shout about. It's not an incredibly fuel efficient car, but for its size, given that it weighs sort of, you know, nearly 3 tons, I think it does really, really well. And it's not just fuel that's expensive. Every kind of running cost associated with this car in the UK is expensive. Tax, you know, you're in the highest tax band now, I think, in the UK. So right now it's about 735 quid. It's going to go up again from the 1st of April 2025, so a few weeks from now here in the UK. So, you know, that might be closer to 760 odd. Insurance, although these don't really get stolen that much, they're kind of tainted by the rest of the Range Rovers, the newer Range Rovers that were getting stolen all the time. You know, they were just guilty by association. So insurance companies across the board just raised prices. That has started to dip a little bit. Fully enough, I spend quite a lot of time looking at other cars and getting quotes for them just to, you know, see where they line up from insurance. It's a little glimpse into how boring my life is. But I recently did a quote of this again, and it's gone down by another 200 quid. You know, as a ballpark figure, this is about 1,500 for me at the moment, and I have a clean license and I've been driving for a fair few years, and I live in a really rural area. So, you know, if you live in a city where there's a high crime rate, just be mindful that these will be probably still quite expensive, you know, comparative to other cars. You know, compared to sort of more modern and newer Range Rovers, these are still very cheap. The way I kind of justify it in my head is, yes, the running costs are expensive, but the actual purchase price of these cars now is incredibly low, especially when you consider the overall package that they give you. So, you know, if you were looking on the market for anything else, what else really is there that comes close to this? Yeah, you have the other options of the older 4x4s, but I still don't think they're as good as this Range Rover. And any modern car that's as luxurious isn't going to be anywhere near as cheap to buy. And any kind of, you know, cheaper modern car isn't going to be as nice. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It all honestly just comes down to the individual and what fits your lifestyle. As I said before, you know, this is currently my daily. I did have it alongside a BMW 3 Series, and I ended up getting rid of it because I thought, well, this does everything I need it to. But the only way I can honestly see me getting rid of this, in the short term anyway, is if it lets me down a couple of times. And I think that's potentially maybe the Achilles heel with my kind of justification for this car. You know, any car can break down. I totally get that. 100%. You know, any car can fail, any car can require maintenance and a repair. And the kind of stage I'm at in my life at the moment, I need to be able to rely on my car. And right now, this car has not let me down at all. It's been fantastic. Yes, it's had a few quirks, but nothing that's, you know, left me on the side of the road and also really inconvenienced me. Nothing like that's happened. But if the odd thing starts to happen that does that, it might have to go, purely because I can't have that inconvenience and that lack of reliability. But right now it's fine. But if you're kind of like me and you're a bit risk averse and you don't want that potential nagging thought in the back of your mind that goes, "Ooh, is it going to get me there? Oh, I'm not going to have any problems." Again, this is not the car for you. So getting back to the original point of this video, should you buy a 4.4 litre TDV8 L322 in 2025? And my honest answer is yes. Because I guarantee, if you're watching this video, this isn't the first video of this kind that you've watched. You've probably already been browsing the classifieds, and the thought of having one of these keeps reoccurring and coming up. And given the current price of these, I think you've just got to scratch the itch. There is always going to be a risk that you don't get on with it. There is always going to be a risk, given the age of these cars and given some of the mileages that they've hit, that there's going to be problems. They are expensive to run. They are expensive to maintain. You're going to have to get used to paying more to look after and run your car. But I honestly think, given the price point of these, it's kind of a no-brainer. It just really is. If you don't like it and you don't get on with it, you can always sell it. These at the moment aren't a massive financial outlay to buy. They're just not. There's a few people who are chancing their arms, especially with the kind of Jeremy Clarkson spec being in a couple of the greens that you can get, who are charging sort of 15, 20k for them. Avoid those ones. Unless you're really set on having a green Range Rover, then, just avoid them. If you want it, fine. But you can get really, really good examples now for under 10k. And to be honest, as long as it's been maintained and serviced at the right intervals, it's had a good owner, it's had a good life, it doesn't look abused, it looks well looked after. I also really wouldn't be that bothered about mileage. Right now, mine's done 153,000 miles. And the service history behind it is fantastic. Again, I keep referring to previous videos, but it's probably had about sort of 10 or 15k spent on it in the last 3 years. So it's had quite a good life. So in summary, buy one. But like me, just go in completely eyes wide open that this is not a car that you can run on the cheap, that it may have issues, and that it isn't perfect. And to be honest, if you take that into account, I think you'll get on absolutely fine with this car. Anyway, I hope that was useful, guys. I've tried to be as honest as possible about this car. I've probably come across a little bit biased about it, and that's not on purpose. I'm just really, really enjoying it. Obviously, if you've got any comments, questions, or queries about these cars across any of the videos I've done, I'm always happy to answer them. So to chuck those in, there's no problem whatsoever. Do check out the other videos on the L322 as well. And if you enjoyed the video, do give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do me a massive favour and slap that button and get subscribed. And then you won't miss out on any more L322-ness, as it were. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.